Very good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Matchday Live preview in association with Standard Chartered. Merry Christmas. Hope you had a good day yesterday. The Premier League is back after more than 6 weeks, so lots to get into over the course of the next 15 minutes. The return of the top flight, the threat that Aston Villa might pose today, some reflections on Thursday's Carabao Cup exit at the Etihad against Manchester City, and the man on my right will pick his team to face Aston Villa this afternoon. Good afternoon to a man who scored here back in 1985 at the start of a title-winning season, August the 21st, 85, a late equaliser. Ian Rush afterwards missed a penalty to win it 3-2. Remember that?
When you start off by saying a man who scored it, I thought, no one ever. But then, of course, yeah, I do remember it.
Good.
Yeah.
Do you remember Christmas Day yesterday?
Yeah, I do as well, yeah, absolutely.
Good day?
Yeah, I enjoyed it. Had a really great time.
What was it like as a footballer? Because obviously Boxing Day is the big day, and all of us who are fans love going and watching games on Boxing Day. But as a player, what was the sort of Christmas period like back in the day?
I think we enjoyed it equally as much as the fans. It was obviously the norm. It was a routine you got yourself into, and you train on Christmas Day. And bear in mind, where you're playing Boxing Day, you then make your way to if it was an away game, or even if you played at home, you go to a hotel, isn't it? And just the once in '86, we played the 26th and the 27th, you know what I mean?
Wow.
Which was just one of them things in it, but nobody made a big deal out of it. But really enjoyed the Christmas period generally, and there was always an opportunity, wasn't it? If you could win, if you had 3 or 4 games, you could win all of those, and you could make a real impact or real damage to the other teams who were contenders.
Of course, this year we head into the festive period in completely new territory because there's been a 6-week break for a World Cup, but it felt like just before the break, Liverpool edged themselves into a better position with those wins over Tottenham and Southampton.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, not just Liverpool, but I also think Mo Salah, and a lot of people spoke about him, and his stats were good just before the break. What will the break do to Liverpool? I really don't know. You know, who will be best equipped? The players who didn't go to the World Cup, or the players who came back early, or the players who almost went all the way? I really don't know. All I will say is, though, we've seen a couple of games. We've seen the Carabao Cup against Manchester City. I've half watched the first Premier League game here today, isn't it? It's back, and it's great, and it looks in really good shape.
Just to touch on the World Cup then as a whole, and we talk about the physical conditions that players will come back in. What about the mental conditions that those, particularly those who've gone a long way and ultimately suffered disappointment with their countries, Ibu Konate being a prime example, how will that affect what they're going to do in the next couple of weeks?
Again, difficult to be 100% sure how it's going to affect people. You talk about players who might be disappointed for whatever reasons, but also people who have won the World Cup, and then all of a sudden you get a return to sort of the real world within days, when normally when you play a World Cup in the summer, you do have 4, 5, 6 weeks of really living it up and enjoying winning the World Cup, isn't it? So we can't be 100% sure, but what you can be sure of is that all the clubs know that this is a very unusual situation, so they would have prepared themselves the best they can. And with the players coming back, the one thing you need now is focus, isn't it? Get the focus back on the Premier League, because to miss out on whatever you can miss out, whether that's a title, a top 4, or get yourself relegated, it's an expensive. Anything you miss out on the Premier League is expensive, isn't it? There's
a lot at stake throughout the course of the table, yeah. You touched on the state of the table and that early game of the day. Drop points for Tottenham already, and you felt that those results for Liverpool before the break, teams like Spurs would have just looked over their shoulder and thought, uh-oh, they're coming. They can't be as poor as they were at times throughout the course of a season.
I think if you look at all the teams, we've got the big 6, and we've got Newcastle now, and I think if you look at all those, I think the one club that everybody's looking at and thinking, when will it click? When will it start to move? And that's what the other teams have with Liverpool, because you still get the feeling that Liverpool still have enough quality in that squad. It's just a case of getting it click, and I know there's injuries to 1 or 2 really important people will, of course, impact things, isn't it? But generally, I think everybody's looking and thinking, the longer they can keep Liverpool in this sort of uncertain period without them doing what we think they're capable of still, it's maybe winning 7, 8, 9 games on the bounce.
Because the other thing about Liverpool is they have the muscle mass of having done that before, and we thought that after that 2-2 draw at Stamford Bridge just after New Year's Day last year, well, it's far too much work for Liverpool to do, but then they reeled off win after win after win. Are they capable of doing it again, I guess, is the big question.
Well, I think they are. But of course we have said it once or twice already in this season, and if you go back to the 1-0 win against Manchester City, you think, well, this might be the one that kickstarts the season. It wasn't quite, but I still think there will be something that can kickstart this season and get Liverpool into that groove, and that groove is, as you say, winning and continuing to win. What
sort of opponents are they coming up against this afternoon? Steven Gerrard sacked by Villa earlier in the season. He'd won 2 of his final 15 games. Villa have won 3 in 4 since then. Does that indicate that they made the right choice?
Again, short term possibly, but they need to look at long term. It was always difficult for Steven Gerrard. He came, he wanted to change things, he was given money, and that adds to the pressure, doesn't it? And then you have to get it right on the pitch, possibly quicker than what Steven was capable of. They've now got a new manager, an experienced manager, who does very well, plays in a certain way, but he certainly knows how to get the best out of an underdog, and Aston Villa today will be the underdogs against Liverpool, and they're the kind of games that Unai Emery normally enjoys.
It's interesting, that contrast, isn't it? Because you talk about the underdog, and that is seen as where he's had success in his career, whether it be Villarreal or Sevilla. But he said in his press conference on Friday, well, if we win, we're only 1 point behind Liverpool. So he, like the club's owners, is thinking, well, where can we take this? Because 12th isn't good enough.
No, absolutely not, and rightly so, isn't it? I mean, you know, it's the second biggest city in England. Aston Villa is a massive club, got great history, isn't it? So it can't be right that we've been that many years without Aston Villa being somewhere near something in terms of trophies, or even top 4 qualifying for Champions League. It's ridiculous, isn't it? They haven't been anywhere near that. So they've got ambitious new owners, they've got an ambitious board, and they've got good football and people in place. The hardest bit is always to get the last bit right, isn't it? Which is out on the pitch.
You touched a few minutes ago on what we saw on Thursday night at the Etihad. What did you take from that from a Liverpool perspective? Disappointing as the holders any time to go out of a competition that you have the trophy for.
Yeah, and I don't think Liverpool planned to go out either. They went there wanting to stay in the competition, because it's a great competition to win, but it's also a great competition to give people games when they needed them. We could have probably done with a quarter-final game, isn't it? What I took was still our ability to create chances. You know, against Manchester City, we still created our chances. There'll be 1 or 2 people looking at our defensive work wasn't maybe up to the level that we expected, but then again, it wasn't our normal back 4 and normal goalkeeper, so that can be excused in a way. But I just like the way that we still cause teams a lot of problems.
And you would probably feel that those teams that had Carabao Cup action in the midweek will be better for it in these round of Premier League matches. By the way, I don't know what's going on with the lights here at Villa Park, but they are flashing like some sort of disco. Anyway, maybe that hit out for the teams in the Cup would have helped them.
The first game is always awkward, whenever it is, the first pre-season game, the first game of the season proper, isn't it? And this now coming back, restart, the first game is the most awkward one, isn't it? So we got ours out the way, which should benefit us for the game today.
You spoke about the uncertainty of what might be ahead. Again, every time we usually come into the festive period, we're talking about, well, how will Jurgen Klopp rotate his squad? Will someone play one, rest another? But there are people who haven't done a huge amount for 6 weeks. Does that make it harder for them to play 3 games in 5 or 6 days?
There is a possibility of that, because also you'll get that. What you do in a game and the amount of work you put in the game, you can't do that. You can't replicate that on a training ground. It's only out there, isn't it? So again, it will depend on how people react to playing games. You've got the game here, you've got the Leicester game, and then you've got to go to Brentford, which is an extremely difficult game, isn't it? So there will be people well equipped to play the 3 of them, but there will be others who will be struggling, and they'll be needed to be looked after.
We've talked about the uncertainty. We've asked you to pick your 11, so this could be entirely wrong come 4:30 this afternoon, but we think there could be some big hitters back. Virgil van Dijk, Jordan Henderson, Trent as well, Alisson.
Yeah, I think they'll be back in playing. I mean, this is for real, isn't it? I know that Spurs today decided to leave Hugo Lloris on the bench, which made no sense to me whatsoever. The players are back. They need to play, as we said before. This is a big part of the season, and they're playing so many games over the festive period. Get the points on the board, isn't it? And
it's interesting to use someone like Trent, who I know has been ill over the last few days, but he's come through a period where he hasn't really done a lot. He's been away with England, but he's sort of been sat there. So, I mean, again, we're saying, how will that affect him? What will he be like compared to someone like Jordan Henderson, who's been pretty heavily involved? Virgil van Dijk the same?
I think Trent will be raring to go. Trent might not have had the best time before the World Cup break in terms of his individual performances, but we know he's a great player, and he just needs to find that again. And I think he's been chomping at the bits, and he wants to get going. He wants to show people what he can do, isn't it? We know what he brings, doesn't he? You know, I mean, the assist that we instantly associate with him, isn't it? And we just haven't seen the assist that we normally see from him, isn't it? But
today might well be the day.
You're not really worried about anyone who's as talented as he is.
Just looking at the whole over those Christmas period, the Christmas fixtures, we talk about where Liverpool are and where they want to be. Jurgen Klopp saying that top 4 is the big priority. You've got to be looking at 7 points minimum from Villa, Leicester, Brentford.
Yeah, and I think that's possible. I mean, we normally do well against Villa, which doesn't guarantee anything. And Leicester, to be fair, after their terrible start to the season, but they've found some form. And of course, Brentford away. You know, they've only lost 1 home game all season. They're very, very difficult. So it is a difficult period, isn't it? But if you've got real aspirations, and we do, then you do need to take 7, a minimum of 7.
Jan, thank you very much indeed. Jan will be back with us during Matchday Live this afternoon. Let's just point you in the direction of our coverage throughout the course of today. 4:30 Matchday Live gets underway. Team news from here at Villa Park, interviews as well, then full audio commentary from 5:30 this afternoon, and then reaction from Villa Park and in the studio at 7:30. Later on, short highlights available at 9:30 on LFC TV Go. The full match available at midnight, then midnight tomorrow, all the behind the scenes footage from here at Villa Park. As Jan mentioned, very good record for Liverpool at this ground. They've only lost 2 of their last 21 visits. Can they take 3 points on Boxing Day this evening? We'll see you a bit later on.